Hi guys, my name is Nerit and today we are taking Things Fall Apart. Okay, so very quickly before we go into the business of today. In our last video, we talked about the proper way to answer examination questions. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you do so that you know how to answer questions essay style, especially if you are reading this book for academic purposes. So today, like I said earlier, we are going to be talking about Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Very quickly, Things Fall Apart is one of the best books I have ever read in my life. It is so beautiful and original, and I love it so much. So let's start with a summary. Things Fall Apart is a story that is set in pre-colonial Nigeria. That is the first setting. It actually has more than one. But it begins when it is set in pre-colonial Nigeria. It is a typical African society, hasn't been invaded yet by colonial powers. So it's just the African people living their lives. This one is set in Umofia. It is a small Igbo village in east of Nigeria. So the protagonist of this book is Okonko, and we see that he's a powerful man in his society, but he flashes back to how he wasn't always like that. And one of the driving forces of his success is how terrible his father's life was, in his opinion. His father was very lazy, and so they were poor, and he died. His burial wasn't honorable, things like that. So you know how you look at someone and say, I don't want to be like that. So he learned by observation and he put in the hard work, and he became rich. He had barns of yam stored up even when it wasn't the yam farming season. I don't know how to say that. He had a lot of money, basically. He had, I think, 3 wives. He was rich, powerful in his society. He was so powerful that he was one of the 9 masked spirits who listened in on cases in Umofia and meted out justice accordingly. This was a very high honor. So Okonko was very, very rich, powerful, trusted, respected in his society. And that is why when the boy, Ikemefuna, is taken as tribute from his people to Umofia, he is placed in the care of Okonko. And he is kind of like Okonko. Very hardworking, diligent, ambitious. So Okonko takes to him. He likes him. And he hopes that he's going to rub off on his own first son, who is woman-like in Okonko's opinion. As we are reading the novel, we are exposed to the fact that Okonko is imperfect by any stretch of the word. He has anger issues, mad anger issues. He beats his wife on the day of peace, and as a result, he has to pay the sacrifice for it. He does some kind of rite to purify himself of the sin that he has committed. Yet he is respected and trusted. He's highly placed in the society because he has worked for it. Now, while Ikemefuna is with him, they grow so close and Ikemefuna starts to call him father. When it is now decided by the gods that Ikemefuna must die, someone warns Okonko that he should not have a hand in his death because this boy calls you father, do not have a hand in his death. And they go to where they are going to kill him under the guise of taking him home. And when the boy notices that there's danger, like something is amiss, he runs to Okonko, father, and Okonko takes his machete and strikes the boy down. He does this to save face. He doesn't want to seem weak to other people, but this is a great mistake because of what happens after that. Following the death of Ikemefuna, an old man dies in the society. I'm sorry, I can't remember their names. It seems like I'm not prepared for this video. Don't judge me. I'm sorry. Anyway, this old man dies and they go to bury him. But Okonko mistakenly fires his gun because I think there was a firing right or something. They were firing and then a bullet mistakenly hits the boy's son and he dies, which is a very grave crime against the earth goddess. So when Okonko's bullet hits the boy, he dies. It wasn't intentional, it wasn't murder, it wasn't premeditated by any stretch, but it is a crime, very grave crime, and he must pay the price for it. Now the price for it is banishment. He has to go on exile for 7 years. And so he packs his things, he packs his family, wraps up his life, this beautiful life that he has built, and he goes to Mbanta. That is his mother's village. He goes there, right? And back in Umofia, his people burn his things, they burn everything as a form of purification for what has happened. Now he goes to Mbanta and he has to start afresh, but it's Okonko. He is hardworking, he is diligent, he hates laziness more than anything, and of course he thrives while he is there. He starts from scratch, but he makes a name for himself like that, because if you put in the hard work, you'll see the results. While he is on exile, there's the first sighting of a white man. White man has come into Nigeria. He has come into the Igbo community, and it's causing katakata. Like, things are not as they used to be. People who are known to be fearless are now cowering. It's the clear one village. They finish a whole village of people, and Okonko is boiling because if he was back home, they would have finished them. So at this point in the novel, Okonko's exile is coming to an end, and he's excited to get back to Umofia. He has enjoyed his time with his mother's people. He has thrived there. But Nigeria is a patriarchal society, so we are raised knowing that our fatherland, our father's place is where we are from. So he has 2 daughters, I think, that have come of age, ready to be married, and he's hoping that this would also serve as an in for him to get back into society. He's ready, he's going back home, he's happy. Now when he gets back home, he's met with the shock of his life. His people, the fearless people that he knows, courageous, beautiful, they are different. The white man has come and he has set up his own systems, and his people have been relegated. So there's new religion, there's a new system of government, everything is just different. And when Okonko expects his people to actually rise up and fight for their land, stake their claim, assert their dominance, they fail him. So an incident happens, a snake is killed, I think. There's this spiritual snake that has spiritual significance that isn't supposed to be tampered with, and somebody, a Christian, one of the new converts, kills the snake, I think. I hope I'm not confusing this book with Arrow of God. Anyway, the snake is killed, and just as an aside, the person who kills the snake dies, so the people are for that charge to know that their gods are alive and they are not happy. So anyway, they go to speak to the people who are now in charge of these combats that are loose on the land and causing havoc, desecrating laws that they know they are not supposed to desecrate. Anyway, while they go, they are arrested. Elders of the land are arrested, and they are imprisoned for a brief period. They are treated like shits, and it is demeaning to them. So when Okonko is able to, he acts and he attacks one of the messengers, I think. And he expects, obviously, that is the opening strike. He expects his people to rally around him, let them fight and take their land back. But everybody is silent. Nobody does anything. And that is when he knows, it is over. So he goes out and he hangs himself. Yes, spoiler alert, he commits suicide. Now this is the climax of the novel, the end, but kind of the climax as well, because we are faced with somebody who is well loved by his people, someone who is successful, someone who lives and breathes his culture, and at the loss of that now is not worth living for. So he ends his life. He takes his life, and it is a big loss to his community, because the way he dies, it's abominable to them. They are not allowed to bury him. They are not allowed to look upon him even. So they just take his body and they throw it into the forest. Now that we are done with that summary, I'm sorry for how it was, we are going right into the themes. And the first theme that we are looking at is the beauty of African culture. That is what we are first faced with. When the story starts, we see a community that works. It works like a well-oiled machine. Everything works like this. Everybody knows their duties. Everybody knows what is expected of them. Everybody knows that if you don't do A, B will happen. And if B happens, you have to do C to atone. So that is how it is. Everybody does what is expected of them, and they are really sorry when they don't meet up to the expectations that have been laid out for them. There's peace all around. Quite honestly, everything just works. There is They have their rights, they have their system of governance, they know the hierarchy of things. It is important to note that that society was not there was no monarchy, there was no king. They just had elders who oversaw the affairs of the land. So they had a system of governance that worked for them. They had their marriage rights, they had their festivals, New Yam festivals, they had their burial rights, they had rights for naming children, how to welcome children, they had their rights, everything worked. So this is an important theme because Things Fall Apart is an archetypal novel. This novel was the first book, one of the first, to shine a light on Africa. That, imaginative literature this beautiful can come from these people. Let us note that before Africans learned how to read and write, before they became literate, we had our oral literature. Definitely African literature has oral beginnings, but before we could read and write, colonialists were misrepresenting us. If you see Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, the natives are described like savage people who live in the jungle, but this post-colonial novel by Chinua Achebe is here to correct that fact. He's making it known that we were people. We may not have been conversant with English language, but we had our language. We could communicate, we could live, we could think, we were capable of everything that the colonialist was capable of. Closely related to the theme of how beautiful African literature is, we also see that spirituality is not unfounded, so to say. We are faced with two different gods. There's the gods of the African people and then the god that the colonialists are preaching, which is the Christian God. Now, the Christian people like to say that there's no other God but God. But I prefer to say there's no greater God than God, because we can see evidence of the Igbo people's gods actually working. When Okonko is warned not to kill Ikemefuna, he goes ahead with it. And we can see what follows. How? He has been to many burials, he has done the shooting right 1,000,000 times, and all of a sudden a gun that is pointing up shoots and kills somebody. So that we can see is an effect of what he did, killing Ikemefuna. So this was a punishment, so to say, from the gods. Another manifestation of the Igbo gods is when the man kills the snake and he dies after mysteriously. So another theme is that of cultural conflict. We are faced with different cultures now in the society. When Okonko is in Mbata, the white man comes into Africa, so he comes in with his culture, his religion, his way of life. He meets these people with their own culture, their religion, and their way of life, and there's a clash. Because in most colonial settings, the white man comes with his religion and he feels it is superior to that of the people that he's coming to invade. They feel, these people are savages, they don't know what is right. So there's a cultural clash, and that is why when people are trying to do something, these are the white people interrupt because they don't know the importance of what the Africans are doing. It kind of helps to put together, to bring similar points from another book to back up your points from this book. It shows that you are widely read and that you have the capacity to connect. So I want to give an example with Death and the King's Horseman. It was written by Wole Soyinka and it is based on a true life story that actually happened in Nigeria. So in Death and the King's Horseman, the King's Horseman is someone who accompanies the king to the afterlife. So when a king dies, his horseman is killed, or his horseman commits suicide voluntarily so that he can accompany the king, so to say, because if the king goes without a horseman, then he's not going to rest in peace, and if he doesn't rest in peace, it's trouble for the land. So the king's horsemen they know themselves, like they grow together with the king, so they know that as soon as my king dies, I die. So the king's horseman is called Elesin Oba. So the king's horseman in this book was not really ready to die, so to say, because he kept putting off taking the potion that would kill him. So there were white men in the land, Mr. Pilkins. So when he finds out what is happening, he arrests the king's horseman so that he cannot commit suicide. And because of that, trouble ensues. Like, The king's horseman has a son who the Pilkings had sent abroad to study medicine. So he had gone abroad, he was exposed, he knew what the European culture was about. But when he comes back home, he doesn't forget who he is. And that is why when his father is arrested, he takes his father's place and he commits suicide. So because the Pilkings didn't understand the culture, there was a clash. So because Mr. Pilkings did not understand the culture, he interrupted what was supposed to be. He interrupted what the people believed they were supposed to do to keep sanity in their land. And that is why the king's horseman, with all his education and his exposure, takes the place of his father and he kills himself. Now this is an abomination, and the father as well kills himself. So in trying to preserve one life, the Pilkings have caused the death of 2 people. Another theme is communalism versus individualism. You know how people go abroad and they say, oh, they are missing home because they don't know their neighbors, nobody cares about them, nobody's checking on them. You know how it is now in Africa. Nigeria, let me say Nigeria because I don't know how it is in other parts of Africa. Christmas period, you are sharing food with your neighbors, you are sharing some little chops just to show that communal living. If something happens in your neighbor's house, all of you rally around to help them or to see how you can just make them feel better. So this is a theme in this book. Before Okonkwo goes to Mbanta on exile, there's this communal living that is there. You see, the community is one. There are no cracks. Everything is tight. But when he comes back, there are cracks. And this, I can say, is because the white man has come. With his individualistic way, he has come and he has rubbed off on people, especially people who were not doing so well in the society. He has brought cracks in terms of his religion. So they are now acting for their interests. In terms of governance, they are acting for their interests. People are doing what they feel will benefit them most. When Okonkwo attacks the man, if it was before the coming of the white man, as a community they would have handled it. But now everybody's thinking of self and not the loss that is about to befall all of them. The loss of culture, their way of life, everything as they know it. So to sum it up, the last theme we'll be looking at is the effects of colonialism. The most obvious effect, I would say, is that things fall apart. Things fall apart in the sense that everything changes. Once the white man comes, nothing is as it used to be. Everything is changed, everything scatters. Another effect of colonialism is the loss of identity. There are people who are now at a crossroads. They don't know who they are. Their religion, their culture, what they've grown into is one thing, and this other thing that they're faced with is very different. So there's loss of identity in it. We can tie everything up by saying loss of identity is what makes people act out. For example, the person who killed the snake, he would never have dared without the coming of the white man. He would never have dared, but then he dares now. So that shows loss of his identity. He has forsaken the gods that he has known, and in the end he pays for it with his life. So today we have been able to look at Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. We have looked at the summary and some major themes that will help you to understand really the purpose of this book. And this is the end of our video. We'll be ending here for today. Please engage. Let me know if this video has been helpful to you. Let me know if there's any other book you would want us to look at. For our next video, I believe we would be looking at The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. So stay tuned for that. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and you can turn on your notifications so you don't miss any video. Thank you.